Hi, I'm Adam from School of Rock. Today we're going to be talking about drum notation for beginners. Drum notation is a form of writing down music specific to percussion instruments. It's quick and easy to learn. Think of it as a language for drums. If you know how to read and write drum notation, then you know how to communicate musically with others. To read drum notation, you need to learn the different cymbals. These symbols tell you what part of the drum set to play and when. By learning how to read drum notation, you'll be able to quickly play a rhythm or drum beat, even if you've never played it before. Drum notation is different than sheet music. Although they look similar and use some of the same concepts, in sheet music, the cymbals on the staff correspond to different notes. In drum notation, the cymbals represent different parts of the drum set to be played. Snare, hi-hat, bass drum, etc. This is useful for beginners learning to coordinate their limbs, helping to develop the necessary skill set for both comfortably keeping time and playing the correct part of the drum set. In drum notation, the notes are written on the staff and are separated by vertical bar lines. The space between the bar lines is referred to as a measure. You will typically count beats while playing different notes on the drum set within each measure. Drum notation does contain similarities to sheet music in that the measures are counted and read the same way. By learning to read and write this part of the musical language, you'll develop a strong sense of time and rhythm control. Reading drum notation is a lot like reading the English language, in that it's done from left to right. The staff is made up of 5 lines and 4 spaces, but notes can be positioned above or below the staff as well. Notes are placed in the staff based on which part of the drum set should be played at any given time. The bass drum is in a different position on the staff than the snare or ride cymbal. Drums are notated by dots, while cymbals are notated with an X. These cymbals typically have stems attached to them, which help explain how to count the beat that is shown. There are several symbols musicians should know when starting to read drum notation, especially if they're just starting off with a 4 or 5-piece drum set. Notation for the bass drum sits in the bottom space of the staff. The bass drum is typically the biggest drum on the drum set and usually produces the lowest note. It is used with a foot pedal and often referred to as the kick drum. Notation for the floor tom sits on the 3rd space from the top of the staff. The floor tom or low tom is typically the next lowest note on the drum set. It is often referred to as the floor tom because it has legs and rests on the ground. Toms are notated on the 1st space from the top of the staff and the line below that space. Sometimes called the high tom, the drum typically produces a note higher than both the floor tom and the bass drum. Many drum fills are started on this drum, and many drum sets have more than one tom. The snare drum is often considered to be the main drum of the drum set. Its notation is located in the 2nd space from the top of the staff. Many drum beats are based around the pattern between the bass drum and the snare drum. It gets its famous snare sound from the snare wires that are attached at the bottom of the head. Cymbals are used for many different purposes. The ride cymbal is often tapped with the tip of the stick to create a feeling of riding, but it can also be used as a crash cymbal. On the staff, it's located on the very top line. Hi-hat notation sits above the top line on the staff and is often the main timekeeping tool. The hi-hat is a pair of cymbals attached to each other with a stand and a foot pedal. Drummers can control the type of note that is produced by stepping on the hi-hat pedal and tightening the 2 cymbals together and then striking them. This is also known as a closed hi-hat. Or you can release your foot and let them bounce together, also known as an open hi-hat. A crash cymbal is a very loud cymbal that is often used to accent different rhythms within music. Crash cymbals vary in size and tone and contain a large number of different styles and sounds. This cymbal differs from the others on the drum set because it's often struck with force and can help elevate the dynamic movements of a piece of music. Its notation is located above the hi-hat, above the top line of the staff. On drum sets with 2 crash cymbals, the 2nd crash will be notated in the space above the 1st crash. Music is often divided up into even or sometimes odd groups of space. We use measures in music to organize the rhythms of the song into these repeated groupings to make it easier to count through a song. To communicate what grouping we should count, we use what's called the time signature. A time signature contains two numbers displayed as a fraction. The top number tells you how many beats to count within one measure, and the bottom number tells you what type of note gets the beat: quarter notes, eighth notes, etc. Think of time signatures as a ruler. You are measuring time, or more accurately, the space between the notes that you are playing. For example, a quarter note in 4/4 time signature represents one beat, meaning you strike the drum once per beat. And a whole note in a 4/4 time signature represents 4 beats, meaning you strike the drum once every 4 beats. Some of the most common drum beats are whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, and 32nd notes. There are different types of triplets that can be played as well, where you play 3 notes in the space normally occupied by 2 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E. Repeat signs tell you to do just what it sounds like. Repeat a pattern. That being said, there are several different repeat signs to understand in drum notation. Many drum parts are played in patterns, meaning they are played more than once or twice in a row. In drum notation, a repeat sign tells the drummer to return to the beginning of the section and play the same part again. The 1-bar repeat sign means to repeat the previous measure for an additional measure and then move on. The 2-bar repeat sign means to repeat the previous 2 measures and then continue. It looks the same as the 1-bar repeat sign, but has 2 lines instead of 1. You may often see the number 2 written above the cymbal. You can play each drum in a variety of ways. Each gives you a different result. Drummers are responsible for both tempo control and dynamic control. There are different types of cymbals used to tell the drummer how hard and soft to play. There are multiple ways to strike a drum, depending upon the type of grip that you are using. How you grip the stick determines how the drum will sound when you hit it. You can use a tight or loose grip and can play using different grip types, such as traditional or matched. Be sure to hold the sticks in a correct position and to balance them in your hands comfortably. You don't always need to strike hard to draw out volume on the drum set. Drums are naturally loud. You can use your thumb and index finger to control the stick while using the other fingers to balance out the motion. Drummers have the ability to accent different parts of rhythms by making certain notes sound louder, softer, lower, or higher, or by using different parts of the drum set. Example of an accent is when a drummer opens the hi-hat during a drum beat and strikes it, and then presses back down on the foot pedal to close it, creating an open and closed sounding rhythm. The accent cymbal is usually located directly above the note being accented. The Marcato technique is represented by one note being played more loudly or forcefully than others surrounding it. This is a good way to accent notes in a drum beat. It's displayed as a vertical wedge above the intended note written on the page. Ghost notes are often played as light, bouncy notes on the snare drum that can sound like many quick notes played in succession. This drum technique is often used in drum beats to help create more rhythmic movements within a piece of music, and can be played with both the right and left hands. Let me demonstrate some ghost notes on the snare. A flam note is created when a drummer strikes a drum with both hands simultaneously while placing the notes slightly apart from each other. It sounds like 2 notes, but they're very close together and feel like 1 note. Here's an example of a flam. A basic drag rudiment is played by having one hand quickly strike 2 notes on the drum, followed by a single stroke with the other hand. When played tightly and quickly, you will get 3 notes that sound close together. Accent a final note in the drag rudiment to create a completed sound. Here's an example of a drag. A rim click or cross stick technique is employed when the drummer places the stick across the drum and taps the rim. You can strike the rim using the shoulder of the stick and can even turn the stick around to use the bottom side. Each gives a different sound. This technique is often used in soft, quiet pieces of music. When setting up your drum set, you have many options for selecting your cymbals. Depending on what you play, you may encounter any of the following techniques while reading drum notation. The hi-hat is one of the main timekeeping tools for a drummer. By pressing your foot down on the pedal, you can create a tight sound between the 2 cymbals. The more you release the pressure on the pedal, the more of a washy sound your hi-hat will make. You can use the bell of the cymbal to accent a part more loudly. Drummers often use the shoulder of the drumstick to bring out the volume of the bell. A choke crash technique is used when muting a cymbal after it's been hit. This often creates a tight feel in music if performed alongside different instruments. To do this, you will first need to strike the cymbal as normal and immediately grab it with one of your hands to quickly reduce its sound, like so. A China cymbal is often used as an alternative to a crash cymbal. It sounds very loud and heavy. This cymbal can be used to accent loud sections in a piece of music. This is what it sounds like. Although I don't have a splash cymbal here, a splash cymbal is a very small cymbal that is used to accent light sections in a piece of music. Because of its small size, the notes don't last as long as those of a ride or crash cymbal. Therefore, this cymbal can be used to add a lot of versatility to lighter dynamic sections in music. A loose hi-hat technique is in between a closed and open technique. You will typically press down lightly on the foot pedal, allowing the 2 cymbals to bounce off each other, but not so much that they resonate for a long time. You can use this technique to create a louder dynamic within a piece of music. Here's what it sounds like. When it comes to playing the drums, the sky is the limit. These are only a small sample of the many drum techniques you may encounter while reading drum notation. A soft one-handed roll is played by lightly striking the drum and then letting the bottom of the stick rest against the rim, followed by bouncing the stick back toward the drum to get the second stroke. This technique can be used to achieve more notes quickly with one hand. Here's an example of a one-handed roll. When starting to read drum notes, it's important to consider the following helpful tips to ensure you meet success. 1. Break the lesson down into smaller pieces. When learning a new song on drums, divide its sections into unique groups and work on them one at a time. Then connect them together. This trick will help you memorize the parts of the song more quickly. 2. Take it slow. New drummers need to develop the coordination between their limbs. Learning drums is just as much of a mental challenge as it is a physical challenge. A good method for new drummers is to practice rudiments and paradiddles taught in our drum lessons so that you can learn different patterns of right and left strokes on the drums. Much like learning how to play a video game for the first time, your brain needs to learn right and left striking patterns. This can take time, so patience is important. 3. Set time aside to practice every day. Beginner drummers need to train their brains to use their limbs in new ways. Setting aside time every day to practice will help you reinforce good habits and lead to more consistent improvement than doing longer, less frequent practice sessions. 4. Consider drum notation software. Drum notation software is a helpful tool when learning how to read and write music. As you learn the language, consider using different applications to help you grasp new concepts behind the drum set. A metronome is also a necessary tool for new drummers to help locate the beat and keep steady time. Tempo control will improve tremendously when a metronome is used in a student's practice routine. 5. Use words to make rhythms easier. For beginners, learning to read drum notation is a lot like learning a new language. Use associations early on to remember what certain things mean on the drums. For example, certain words contain syllables that are applicable to different rhythms. The word pizza can be used to remember how to play eighth notes, like so. Pizza, pizza. The word cheese can represent quarter notes. Cheese, 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 cheese. Pepperoni can be used for 16th notes. Pepperoni, pepperoni. And anchovy for triplets. Anchovy, anchovy. Now that you know the basics of reading drum notation and some fundamental drum techniques, you are ready to start playing. From beginner to advanced, School of Rock has taught thousands of students how to play drums and reach their full potential. Our instructors have the knowledge and experience to have you quickly playing your favorite rock songs on stage. At School of Rock, our instructors walk you through step by step to teach you how to play drums with skill and confidence. We make learning an instrument fun so you can get up on stage and rock in a band. Our music programs are taught by practicing musicians just like me with the experience you need to learn to play. With School of Rock, you can perform live shows and develop your skills in a supportive learning environment for all skill levels. If you liked what you learned here, head over to schoolofrock.com to find classes fit for musicians of all skill levels, or head to the description below to sign up for a class today.